The stars stretched across the black sky like endless lamps, each one glowing with a secret of the universe. Among them, a single ship moved slowly, carrying a human explorer named Mark. His ship was small compared to the great carriers of Earth, but it was strong enough to cross the distances that most feared to travel. Mark had been chosen for this mission not because he was the strongest, but because he was calm, patient, and able to face new worlds with respect. His orders were clear. He was to land on the alien world of Tyrones, a planet ruled by an ancient royal family. The people of Tyrones were advanced, known for tall cities made of shining crystal and traditions that stretched back thousands of years. Few humans had ever been welcomed there. To step on the soil of Tyrones was a rare honor, and it was also a dangerous task. When Mark's ship descended through the clouds, he looked out the window in wonder. The land below was breathtaking. Towering spires of silver and blue rose like mountains, built by hands that had shaped both stone and light. The rivers glowed softly, carrying streams of energy that powered the cities. Everywhere he looked, he saw order and beauty. It was not a world of chaos. It was a world of rules, a world that demanded respect. As the ship touched the landing ground, he felt a tightness in his chest. Soldiers in shining armor stood in neat lines, their faces hidden behind masks shaped like animals of their world. They did not raise their weapons, but their silence was heavy. Mark stepped out, breathing in the strange air, which carried a scent like metal and flowers mixed together. A voice echoed across the landing field. "Human traveler, you stand on sacred ground. Walk forward with care." Mark obeyed, his steps slow, his head slightly lowered. He had been trained to honor their customs, and he did not want to insult them. Ahead, a group of nobles waited, their robes made of fabric that shimmered like liquid glass. But among them was one figure who drew every gaze. She stood taller than the rest, her presence strong and commanding. A crown of glowing crystal rested on her head, and her robe was woven with golden threads that reflected the sun. Her eyes were sharp, bright like two stars that refused to fade. She was the princess of Tyrones, and she carried herself with pride that seemed to shake the very air around her. Mark's heart raced. He had been told about the princess, but no description could prepare him for the moment of seeing her in person. She was not just a leader. She was a living symbol of her people, a figure of honor and strength. The nobles bowed as she lifted her hand. Her voice carried across the gathering. "Human, you are welcomed by our council and by my house. But remember this. You walk in a place that has never been to outsiders. Do not take lightly what is given to you." Mark bowed deeply, placing his hand over his chest. "I understand, Princess. I come not to command, but to learn. I thank you for allowing me to stand here." The crowd murmured, their eyes studying every movement he made. The soldiers did not move, yet their presence was a reminder of the power behind the royal family. The princess lowered her hands slowly, her expression calm but unreadable. He was then guided through the city. Mark followed the nobles, walking past streets of shining stone where people watched silently from balconies. Some eyes were curious, others cold. It was clear that not all welcomed the sight of a human in their heartland. But Mark walked with steady steps, refusing to let fear control him. At last, they reached the grand hall of the palace. Its doors were carved with stories of battles fought long ago. Inside, the hall was vast, filled with light that poured through crystals in the ceiling. Long banners of silver and blue hung on the walls, each one marked with the symbol of the royal family. The throne sat at the far end, raised high upon steps of shining glass. The princess took her place at the throne, her eyes fixed on Mark. The nobles stood on either side, their robes brushing against the floor. Mark was guided to the center of the hall, where he was told to stand before the court. The hall grew silent, so silent that the sound of his own breath seemed too loud. Then the princess spoke again, her words sharp and clear. "Human, we know of your people. We know of their hunger to explore, their drive to claim the stars as their own. Some call you bold. Others call you reckless. Tell us, Mark of Earth, why should Tyrones trust you?" Mark felt the weight of every eye in the room. He chose his words carefully, speaking with the honesty that had carried him across the stars. "Princess, I do not stand here to claim. I stand here to share. Humanity has learned that survival does not come from strength alone, but from the bonds we make. We wish to walk beside those who will let us, not to take from them." The nobles whispered among themselves, their voices like wind in a storm. Some nodded, others frowned. The princess remained still, her eyes searching his face as if she wished to see into his heart. After a long moment, she raised her hand once more. The hall went quiet again. Her voice carried the weight of command. "Words are easy, human. But Tyrones does not measure words. We measure action. Step carefully, for if your hand reaches where it should not, there will be a price. One touch too far, and you will face the weight of our law." Her warning hung in the air like a blade. Mark bowed his head in respect. He understood that every step he took in this world would be judged. The meeting had ended, but the challenge had only begun. The night sky over Tyrones glowed with streams of light that seemed alive. Energy flowed like rivers across the heavens, painting colors that no human eye had ever seen before. Mark stood on a balcony of the guest chamber given to him, staring out in silence. He could feel the weight of the princess's words still pressing on him. One more touch, she had said, and there would be a price. It was not a simple warning. It was a line carved deep into the laws of her world. Inside the palace, guards stood near his door. They did not speak to him, but their watchful eyes never wavered. Mark understood he was both a guest and a prisoner of trust. He was allowed to stay, but he was not free to wander. He respected that. His mission was not to break customs but to show that humans could live beside other civilizations without bringing harm. The next morning, he was summoned to the Hall of Echoes, a place used for rituals of memory. The hall was vast, filled with ancient objects kept safe for centuries. Some were weapons, others were stones carved with symbols of power. Each item carried meaning for the people of Tyrones. Mark walked slowly, guided by two nobles whose eyes were cold. As he entered, he saw the princess again. She stood beside a tall crystal pillar, her robe flowing like water around her. Nobles gathered in a circle, their faces stern. The air inside the hall was heavy, as if the walls themselves waited for judgment. The princess raised her hand. The hall fell silent. "Mark of Earth," she said, her voice echoing across the chamber, "you stand before the memory of Tyrones. These relics are not simple stones or metal. They are the lifeblood of our people. One wrong step here is not insult. It is betrayal." Mark bowed. "I understand, Princess. I will honor what is sacred." The nobles watched closely as he moved with careful steps. His eyes studied the relics with respect. There was a blade forged from black stone, said to have cut through storms. There was a mask of silver that once belonged to a warrior who united the tribes of Tyrones. And there was a crystal sphere glowing softly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Mark's hand almost rose without thought. The beauty of the crystal sphere called to him. Its glow was like a living star trapped in glass. But then he remembered the warning. One more touch, and the price would come. He pulled his hand back quickly, lowering his gaze. The princess's eyes narrowed, sharp as blades. You almost touched what must never be touched. Mark's voice was steady. I was tempted, princess, but I held back. I will not dishonor your laws. A murmur spread through the nobles. Some nodded in approval, others whispered doubt. The princess's gaze did not leave him. She stepped closer, her presence like a storm approaching. Her hand lifted once again, not in blessing, but in warning. Human, she said, you must understand what you face. Our law is not gentle. In the past, outsiders came here and reached where they should not. The price was paid in blood. Do not believe that your kind will be spared. Mark met her eyes with calm strength. I am not here to take. I am here to prove that humans can respect what they do not own. The hall was silent. Even the guards shifted slightly, unsure what to make of his words. The princess studied him, her face unreadable. Then she lowered her hand slowly, though her warning remained heavy in the air. The ceremony ended, but the unease did not fade. That evening, Mark was allowed to walk through the gardens of the palace under guard. The gardens were filled with tall flowers that glowed softly in the night, their petals opening to the stars. Strange birds with crystal wings flew above, their calls like songs of glass. It was a place of peace, yet his heart was not calm. One of the nobles who guided him finally spoke. His voice was sharp, like the edge of a blade. Do not think the princess's warning is only words, human. She holds the power of judgment. If you break her trust, there will be no escape for you. Mark nodded. I have no wish to break trust. My people did not send me here to cause harm. They sent me here to show that we can live in peace. The noble sneered but said no more. The guards remained silent, their eyes fixed on him. When Mark returned to his chamber, he sat by the window again. He thought of Earth, of his people waiting far away. They had placed hope in him. One mistake, one wrong step, and not only his life would be lost, but also the chance for humans to build friendship with this powerful world. As the night grew deeper, he heard a faint sound at his door. It was not the steps of a guard but something lighter. The door opened slowly, and a small figure stepped in. It was not a soldier or a noble. It was a young servant girl carrying a tray of food. She bowed quickly and placed the tray down. Before leaving, she looked at him with wide eyes filled with both fear and curiosity. Is it true? She whispered. Are humans really as bold as the stories say? Mark smiled gently. Some are bold, some are reckless, and some are careful. I try to be careful. The girl nodded quickly and left, closing the door behind her. Mark sat in silence again, the weight of the day pressing on him. The warning of the princess echoed in his mind. One more touch, and there would be a price. He knew then that every moment on Tyrones would be a test. His patience, his respect, and his will would all be judged. And if he failed, the judgment would not fall on him alone, but on all of humanity. The night passed slowly, filled with questions and the sound of distant winds. Mark closed his eyes at last, knowing that the next day would bring new trials, and the princess would be watching every step. The next morning on Tyrones began with a sound like thunder, but it was not thunder. It was the beating of ceremonial drums that echoed across the palace. Their rhythm shook the air, steady and powerful, calling the people together. Mark woke at once, feeling that something important was about to happen. Guards entered his chamber, their armor shining in the morning light. They did not explain with many words. One spoke firmly, "The princess summons you to the circle of judgment." Mark followed without question. As he walked through the halls, he noticed that the palace seemed more alive than the day before. Nobles hurried in long robes, and citizens filled the outer courtyards. Everyone was moving toward one place, as if the entire city was preparing to witness something great. The Circle of Judgment was an ancient arena carved into the heart of the city. Its walls were made of white stone that glowed faintly, marked with old carvings of battles and victories. Thousands of people filled the seats, their voices rising in waves. Some looked curious, others angry, and many stared at Mark with suspicion. He felt the weight of their gaze, but he walked forward with steady steps. At the far end of the arena, the princess stood upon a raised platform. Her robe shimmered with gold and blue, and her crown reflected the morning sun. Behind her, a group of elders sat in silence, their faces stern. The air was heavy with expectation. The drums stopped. Silence fell. The princess raised her hand, and the crowd quieted at once. Her voice carried across the arena with the strength of command. "Mark of Earth," she said, "you have walked among us with care, but words and careful steps are not enough. Tyrannies does not judge outsiders by speech alone. We judge through trial. If you wish to remain, if you wish for your people to be considered more than reckless wanderers, you must prove yourself before all." Mark's heart beat faster, but he did not bow his head. "Princess, I accept your challenge. I will face what is given to me." The crowd roared at his answer, some cheering, others shouting warnings. The nobles whispered among themselves, their faces sharp with doubt. The princess studied him with eyes that revealed nothing, then she lifted her hand again. "Then hear the trial," she declared. "You will enter the arena of storms, where machines of our ancestors wait. These machines were built not for war, but for testing the spirit of our own people. They will not listen to you, nor will they show mercy. To stand through them is to prove courage, wit, and heart. Fail, and you will be cast out. Succeed, and you will be seen with new eyes." The gates of the arena opened with a deep rumble. Mark stepped inside. The ground was smooth stone, marked with lines that glowed faintly. Above him, strange devices floated, moving slowly like watchful spirits. The air felt charged, filled with hidden power. At first, there was only silence. Then the ground shook, and the first machine appeared. It rose from beneath the stone, a tall figure made of metal and crystal, its arms long and sharp. Its eyes glowed with cold light as it stepped toward him. The crowd shouted, their voices mixing fear and excitement. Mark's fists tightened. He had no weapon, only his body and his will. The machine swung its arm at him with speed, and he rolled aside just in time. The stone cracked where the blow landed. Mark moved quickly, using every skill he had learned during training on Earth. He studied the machine's movements, looking for weakness. He noticed that each time it struck, its chest opened slightly to release energy. Without fear, he ran straight toward it. As the arm swung again, he slid beneath the strike and pressed his hand against the open chest. A spark burst out, and the machine froze, then collapsed with a crash. The crowd gasped. Some cheered, others shouted in disbelief. Mark stood tall, breathing hard but unbroken. He looked up toward the princess, who still watched with calm eyes. She lifted her hand, and the next challenge began. 3 smaller machines appeared, their bodies shaped like hounds of metal. They moved fast, circling him with glowing teeth. Mark stayed low, his eyes sharp. One leapt at him, and he grabbed its body, twisting it to crash into the second. Sparks flew as both collapsed. The third came from behind, but Mark rolled and grabbed a broken shard of metal from the ground. With one swing, he struck the hound's core, and it fell silent. The arena shook with noise. The people shouted louder than before. Some began to chant his name, others cried that it was only luck. Mark stood, his chest rising and falling with breath, but his spirit still strong. The ground opened once more, and a final machine rose. This one was massive, taller than the walls, with arms like towers and a face that glowed like fire. The crowd fell silent at its appearance. Even the nobles looked uneasy. Mark stared at it with steady eyes. He knew this was the true test. The machine raised one huge arm and brought it down. Mark ran, the ground cracking behind him. He searched for a weakness, but the giant's body was covered in glowing plates. Then he remembered the lesson of the first machine. Each one had revealed its core when it attacked. He waited, watching closely. At last, the giant raised its arm again, and for one moment, the plates on its chest parted to release energy. Mark dashed forward with all his strength. He leapt, climbing onto its arm as it fell. The crowd gasped as he ran up the length of the giant machine, every step a battle against shaking metal. He reached the chest just as the plates began to close. With every ounce of his strength, he slammed the shard of broken metal into the glowing core. A blast of light erupted, and the machine shuddered with a roar. Then it collapsed, crashing into the arena with a thunder that shook the city. Dust filled the air. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the crowd erupted in sound, a mix of cheers and cries of shock. Mark stood in the center, covered in dust but alive, his eyes lifted toward the princess. She raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent once more. Her gaze was deep, unreadable. Slowly, she spoke. "Human, you have faced the trial of our ancestors. You stood where others would fall. But remember this. Strength alone does not erase fear. The path ahead is not yet open. Take care, for one wrong touch may still bring the price you were warned of." Mark bowed, his voice calm though his body was tired. "Princess, I will honor your warning. But I will also honor the bond one hoped to build." The princess lowered her hand. For the first time, her eyes softened, though only slightly. The crowd still roared, but in that moment, Mark knew the challenge had changed him in their eyes. He was no longer just a visitor. He was now a figure to be judged not only by words but by action. The trial had ended, but the true test of trust had only begun. The sun of Tyrones rose high, spilling golden light across the city. The arena had fallen quiet after the battle, but the memory of the trial still echoed in the hearts of the people. Mark was returned to his chamber, but he was not given rest. The weight of his actions followed him like a shadow. He sat on the edge of the stone bench, his body sore, his clothes marked with dust from the fight. His thoughts circled around the machines he had faced. They were not simple enemies. They were guardians of history, left behind by the ancestors of Tyrones to test the worthy. To survive them was not just victory. It was a message to the people. He had shown that humans could endure. Yet he also remembered the eyes of the princess. Even after his triumph, she had not smiled. Her warning remained the same. One wrong touch, and the price would come. The doors opened, and a noble entered. His robe was heavy with silver threads, his face sharp and cold. The princess commands your presence once more, he said. Mark rose, hiding his tiredness. I will follow. The noble led him through winding halls, past walls carved with ancient stories. Each carving showed the strength of the Turonese people, their victories against storms, beasts, and outsiders. Mark studied them in silence. Every image reminded him that this was a culture shaped by challenge and pride. At last, they reached a smaller chamber. The walls glowed with faint blue light, and in the center stood the princess. She was alone this time, without the circle of nobles. Her robe flowed like water, and her crown shimmered softly. She turned when he entered, her eyes sharp as ever. You stood through the arena, she said. Many doubted you, yet you did not fall. Mark bowed his head. I only did what was needed, princess. I meant no insult to your people. The princess stepped closer, her gaze steady. Strength is not insult. But strength without wisdom is danger. I called you here because the trial is not complete. The machines test your body. Now we will see your heart. Mark felt the weight of her words. What must I face? She lifted her hand toward the wall. The stone shifted, revealing a narrow passage lit with blue fire. Follow, she commanded. Mark obeyed. They walked down the passage, the air cool and filled with a faint hum. At the end, the space opened into a wide chamber. The floor was made of glass, and beneath it flowed streams of glowing energy. In the center stood a table carved from crystal. Upon it rested three objects, a sword, a crown, and a small seed glowing softly. The princess spoke. These are the symbols of our people. The sword represents strength. The crown represents rule. The seed represents life. Every leader of Turonese must choose how to use them. Strength without care destroys. Rule without wisdom corrupts. Life without defense fades. Now you must choose, human. Touch one, and show us what guides your spirit. Mark stared at the objects. He remembered her warning, the weight of her raised hand, the price of one wrong touch. His breath slowed. He thought carefully. The sword shone with deadly beauty, sharp and perfect. With it, one could defend, but also conquer. He thought of Earth's history, filled with wars fought in the name of power. He stepped back from it. The crown glimmered with gold and light. It promised command, a throne, and the power to rule. But he knew that command without trust could only bring fear. He stepped back from it as well. Then he looked at the seed. It was small, fragile, glowing with soft light. It did not promise power or rule. It promised growth, life, future. Mark felt his chest tighten. He remembered the rivers of earth, the forests, the children who would inherit the stars. He thought of bonds between people, the need for trust, and the hope that humans could stand beside others without bringing harm. Slowly, he reached out his hand and touched the seed. The chamber filled with light. The floor glowed brighter, and the streams of energy rose like waves. The seed floated above his palm, shining like a star. The princess watched in silence, her eyes unreadable. At last, the light faded, and the seed returned to the table. Mark lowered his hand. I choose life, he said. Because strength fades, rule can end, but life is what carries meaning. Without life, there is nothing to protect, nothing to guide, nothing to honor. The princess studied him for a long moment. Then she lowered her hand. For the first time, her gaze softened. Few of our own choose the seed. Many reach for the sword. Some reach for the crown. But you chose what others overlook. Perhaps there is truth in your words. Mark bowed. I did not come to take. I came to walk beside those who would allow it. The princess turned and began to walk back toward the passage. Then your trial is not failure. But it is not complete. My people will not accept words alone. You must still stand before them and show that your choice was not weakness. Mark followed her. How will I do that? She glanced back, her eyes shining like the stars above the city. You will stand before the council tomorrow. They will question you, test your spirit, and judge your worth. And remember, human, the warning remains. If you take what is not yours, if you cross the line once more, the price will fall. They returned to the palace halls. The guards bowed as the princess passed, and the nobles watched silently as she led Mark back to his chamber. When the door closed, he was alone again. He sat in silence, his thoughts heavy. He had faced machines of stone and metal. He had touched the choice of life. But the hardest trial still waited, one that no strength or quick movement could win. It would be his words, his patience, and his respect that would decide the path forward. Outside his window, the city glowed in the night. The people of Tyrones whispered of the human who had stood in the arena. Some feared him, others respected him. Tomorrow, he would face their council, and the princess would watch once more with her hand ready to rise in judgment. Mark lay down, his body weary, but his spirit steady. He had chosen life, and now he had to prove that choice to a world that trusted no outsider. The night stretched long, but he did not falter. He knew the trial was not just for him. It was for all of humanity. Morning came to Tyrones with the sky painted in silver clouds. The palace bells rang, calling the council and the people to gather. The circle of judgment was filled once again, but this time it was not machines or battles that waited for Mark. It was voices, questions, and judgment. Mark was led into the center of the great hall where the council sat in tall chairs carved from glowing stone. Each elder wore a crown of crystal that showed their rank. Behind them stood the princess, higher on the throne, her presence strong as always. Her eyes were calm, but her hand rested on the arm of her seat, ready to rise at any moment. The hall was crowded with nobles, warriors, and citizens who had come to watch. Some still doubted, others whispered about the trial he had passed. The air was heavy, filled with both curiosity and suspicion. An elder rose. His voice was deep, carrying authority. Mark of Earth, you faced the machines and lived. You chose life in the chamber of symbols. But trials are not enough. We demand to know the heart of your people. Speak to us. Why should we believe that humans will not bring harm as others once did? Mark stood tall. His voice was steady, though he felt the weight of every gaze. Elder, I cannot speak for all of humanity, but I can speak for the hope that lives within us. We are not perfect. Our history has war, mistakes, and greed. But we also carry courage, love, and the will to protect. I stand here to prove that we are not only takers. We are builders. We are friends when trust is given. The crowd murmured. Some nodded, others frowned. Another elder stood. She held a staff shaped like a branch. Her voice was sharp. Words are soft, human. We know of outsiders who spoke sweetly, yet their hands stole what was sacred. Can you promise us that your kind will not reach where they must not? Mark looked directly at her. I cannot promise for every soul among my people. But I can promise that we will learn from those who trust us. If we are taught the lines, we will not cross them. If we are given a place, we will not break it. Trust is not built in one day, but I am ready to spend my life proving it. The elder's eyes narrowed. She sat down slowly. The whispers grew louder in the hall. Then another voice rose, not from the council but from the crowd. A noble in a dark robe stepped forward. His face was stern, his voice filled with challenge. Human, you speak as if your kind is humble. Yet you walk into our halls, touch our symbols, and face our trials. You defy our laws by simply standing here. If you respect us, why do you not bow and leave instead of asking to stay? The hall erupted in noise. Many shouted in agreement. Some called for him to be removed at once. The guards shifted, ready to act. The princess raised her hand, and silence returned. Her eyes fixed on Mark, waiting for his answer. Mark took a deep breath. His heart pounded, but his voice remained calm. If I were to bow and leave, it would be easy. But it would also be empty. To leave without trying to build trust would be to abandon the chance for unity. I do not stay here to take power. I stay here because I believe our worlds can be stronger together. That is not defiance without reason. It is defiance with hope. The noble's face twisted in anger, but the council did not speak. Instead, the princess rose from her throne. She stepped down slowly, her robe flowing across the steps. When she reached the floor, she stood before Mark, her eyes unblinking. She lifted her hand, and the hall grew tense. Everyone waited for her judgment. Her voice was steady, sharp as a blade. Human, you stand firm even when threatened. You answer not with fear, but with resolve. But do not mistake our patience for weakness. If you betray us, the price will fall heavy upon you and your kind. Mark bowed low, not in defeat but in respect. Princess, I understand. The warning is clear. But I will not step back from the path I have chosen. I believe your people and mine can walk together. I will carry the price if I am wrong. The hall filled with gasps. No outsider had ever spoken so boldly before the throne. Some shouted for punishment, others shouted for honor. The crowd split, voices crashing like waves. The princess did not move at first. Her hand hovered in the air, as if she weighed the fate of both peoples. Then, slowly, she lowered it. Her voice carried across the hall. The human has spoken. He has faced trial of body, trial of heart, and now trial of spirit. His words do not erase our fears, but they show courage. He will not be cast out this day. The noise of the hall rose again, half in anger, half in awe. Guards struck their staffs on the ground to restore order. The council whispered among themselves, uncertain. But the princess's word was law, and none could overturn it. She turned back to her throne, her robe sweeping the floor. Before sitting, she spoke once more, softer but no less powerful. Remember, human. One more step beyond the line, and the price will come. Yet for now, you stand with us, watched by all. Prove that your choice was not weakness. Mark lifted his head. His heart was heavy, but there was also strength within him. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy. He had been spared judgment, but he had not won full trust. The princess had given him a chance, and now he had to show the world of Tyrones that his words were more than sounds. As he was led back through the halls, people whispered his name. Some with hope, others with anger. He had become a symbol of conflict, a spark that could either light a bond or burn it to ash. That night, As he stood once more on the balcony of his chamber, he looked at the glowing rivers below. The warning still echoed in his mind, but so did the choice he had made. He had chosen life, and now he had chosen to stand firm even against fear. The princess had spared him, but the bond between their worlds was fragile. One wrong move could break it. One right step could build it stronger than stone. Mark clenched his fists, his eyes on the stars. He would not give up. Humanity's hope rested on his shoulders, and he would carry it, no matter the price. The morning sun rose gently over the city of Tyrones, casting golden light across the shining towers. Mark stood on the balcony of his chamber, watching the streets below. People moved quickly, some glancing at him with curiosity, others with doubt. The events of the past days had spread throughout the city, and every eye seemed to watch him, waiting to see what the human would do next. The princess had allowed him to remain, but her warning remained clear in his mind. One wrong step, one touch beyond respect, and the price would fall. The weight of responsibility pressed on him like a mountain. He knew that this moment would define not only his own future but also the future of humans on Tyrones. A messenger arrived at his chamber, carrying a small crystal tablet. Its glow was soft but steady, and Mark recognized the symbol of the royal council etched on its surface. The message was brief but urgent. The council had requested his presence in the Hall of Unity. Mark took a deep breath and stepped into the sunlight. The palace corridors were quiet this morning, almost serene. Guards moved with silent precision, their eyes watching him carefully. When he arrived at the Hall of Unity, the doors opened to reveal a chamber larger than any hall he had seen before. It was circular, with a high ceiling of glowing crystal that reflected the light in every direction. Around him sat the council members, their faces serious, their posture rigid with expectation. At the far end, the princess stood on a raised platform. Her hand rested lightly on the edge of her throne, her eyes calm but piercing. She spoke first, her voice carrying across the hall. "Mark of Earth," she said, "you have faced the machines, chosen life over power, and spoken with courage before our council. Yet the hearts of our people remain uncertain. Today, you must prove not only your strength but your understanding of trust and unity." Mark nodded. "Princess, I am ready. I will show the council the truth of my words." An elder with silver hair and a crown of light stood. "Human, you have survived trials meant for our own. You have touched what few dare to consider. But survival is not proof of wisdom. You must demonstrate that your spirit is aligned with ours. Tell us, why should Tyrones place hope in humans rather than fear?" Mark stepped forward, his gaze steady. "Because we understand that life is stronger when it is protected, not taken. We know that power without respect destroys, and courage without patience fails. I have faced your trials not to conquer, but to learn, to honor, and to show that humans can walk beside you, not against you." The council remained silent. Some whispered to one another, skeptical of his words. Then the princess raised her hand. A hush fell over the hall. "Actions speak louder than words," she said. "You have chosen life over power, yet your path is still uncertain. I will give you one final challenge. You must show the council that your choice is not empty and that your respect is real." Mark listened carefully. "What must I do, princess?" She stepped down from the platform, her gaze unwavering. "You will walk among our people, unguarded, in the market of light. There, you will face the judgment of our citizens. Some will test your patience, others your courage. You must respond not with anger or fear, but with respect and understanding. Show them that humans are worthy of trust. The Market of Light was the heart of Tyrones, a place where citizens gathered to trade, speak, and celebrate life. Its streets were lined with glowing stalls, tall crystals hanging above that shone like stars. The air was filled with the soft hum of energy, the scent of flowers, and the murmur of thousands of voices. Mark entered the market with the princess walking behind him. At first, the people stared, uncertain of the human among them. Some whispered questions about his past actions, some expressed doubt about his intentions. Others watched silently, curious to see how he would respond. A child ran forward, holding a small wooden toy in his hands. "Are you really a human?" the boy asked. "Do you mean no harm?" Mark knelt to the child's level. "I am human, and I mean no harm. I wish only to learn and to walk beside your people in respect." The boy's eyes brightened, and he ran back to his family, telling them of the human who spoke with honesty and kindness. Not everyone was as easy to impress. A merchant stepped forward, his face stern, his voice sharp. "Human, you claim respect, yet you have walked into our halls and faced our trials. How can we know you will not take what belongs to us? How can we trust that you will not break our laws?" Mark remained calm. "I cannot speak for all humans, but I can show you my respect by my actions. I will not take what is not given. I will not cross lines that are sacred. I ask only to walk beside you with honor." The merchant studied him, then slowly nodded, understanding that words alone were backed by courage and patience. Throughout the market, more tests followed. Citizens asked questions, challenged him with puzzles, and observed his reactions. Mark responded with calm, respect, and honesty. Slowly, the whispers of doubt began to shift to nods of approval and quiet murmurs of admiration. As the sun reached its highest point, Mark returned to the palace, exhausted but steady. The princess awaited him, her eyes softer than before. She stepped forward, her hand lowered. "You have walked among our people without fear and without insult. You have shown patience, courage, and respect. Perhaps the warning I gave was too heavy for this moment, or perhaps it was necessary to show the strength of your spirit. The council and the people have seen you for who you are, and not for what they feared you might be." Mark bowed deeply. "Princess, I only acted as any human who values life and trust would act. I hope this is only the beginning of understanding between our peoples." The princess nodded. "It is a beginning, Mark. But remember, one wrong step, one betrayal, and the price will still fall. Today, the tide has shifted. Tomorrow, the choice will be tested further. You are no longer merely a visitor. You are a symbol, and symbols are watched closely." Mark felt the weight of her words, but he also felt a quiet hope. For the first time, he sensed that the bond between humans and the people of Tyrones could grow stronger. His actions had turned doubt into curiosity, fear into cautious acceptance. As night fell over the glowing city, Mark stood on the palace balcony once more, looking at the rivers of energy that flowed like silver threads through Tyrones. The princess's warning still echoed in his mind, but now it felt different. It was not only a threat. It was also a challenge, a call to continue proving the strength and honor of humanity. He clenched his fists, feeling resolve fill his chest. He would not fail. He had earned the trust of some, and the hearts of many were beginning to shift. The price could still come, but he would meet it if necessary. Humanity's hope rested on his choices, and he would carry it with courage, patience, and respect. The stars above Tyrones shone brighter than ever, as if acknowledging the efforts of a human who had dared to walk a path of trust in a world full of doubt. The morning on Tyrones was calm, with soft light spilling across the crystal towers. Birds with glowing wings flew through the streets, singing notes that sounded like music from another world. The city seemed to breathe in quiet anticipation. Today was different. Today, the council, the citizens, and the princess herself would witness the final step in the trial of trust. Mark prepared himself in his chamber. His body was tired from the challenges, but his spirit was strong. Every lesson he had learned, every step he had taken, had led to this moment. He knew that the princess's warning still lingered. One wrong action could destroy everything he had worked to build. Yet he also understood that courage and honesty had brought him this far. The doors opened, and a guard appeared. "The princess awaits you in the grand hall," he said. Mark nodded and followed. The halls of the palace were alive with movement. Nobles, citizens, and guards lined the corridors. Everyone watched him as he passed. Some faces held doubt, others curiosity, and a few reflected hope. Mark walked steadily, keeping his gaze forward, his mind focused on the task ahead. The grand hall was enormous, its ceiling high and made of crystal that reflected the sunlight like countless stars. The council members sat in their seats, and behind them, the princess stood tall on her platform. Her robe shimmered like liquid light, and her eyes were fixed on him with a quiet intensity. The hall fell silent as Mark entered. Every gaze was upon him, every whisper stilled. The princess raised her hand slightly, not as a warning this time, but as a signal. The council leaned forward in anticipation. "Mark of Earth," the princess began, her voice calm but strong, "you have faced the machines, walked among our people, and chosen life over power. You have answered questions with courage and respect. Today, you will take the final step. Show us that your kind can be trusted, not only with words, but with your actions." Mark bowed respectfully. "Princess, council, citizens of Tyrones, I will do my best. I have no desire to conquer or take from your world. I only wish to walk beside you in respect, to share knowledge, and to learn from your wisdom. My actions will speak for the truth of my words." A noble from the council rose, his face stern but thoughtful. "Human, you have done what few outsiders can. Yet words can be empty, and actions can be fleeting. How will you prove that your kind will not betray us in the future?" Mark stepped forward. "I cannot speak for all humans, but I can speak for myself. I will teach my people to honor the rules of Tyrones. I will show that respect and trust are stronger than fear. I will live in a way that earns your faith, not demands it." The council remained silent, studying him carefully. Then the princess lifted her hand fully, and the hall grew quieter. Her eyes softened slightly, and for the first time, a small smile appeared on her lips. "Mark of Earth," she said, "you have walked a path that few outsiders could. You have faced trials of body, heart, and spirit. You have shown respect, courage, and patience. You have chosen life over power. Now, for the first time, I will extend a hand of trust." She stepped down from her platform and approached him. The crowd leaned forward, curious and tense. Every eye watched as she lifted her hand and extended it toward Mark. Mark felt a surge of hope and caution at the same time. He remembered her warning, one wrong touch, and the price would come. But this was not a test of defiance. This was a moment of choice, a chance to create a bond that could change the future. He stepped forward carefully and bowed slightly. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. The hall gasped. Some citizens whispered in awe, others in disbelief. But the princess did not pull back. Her hand rested in his, and for a moment, the tension in the air seemed to lift. By this touch, the princess said, her voice carrying across the hall, we acknowledge trust. We do not forget our warnings, but we recognize courage, honesty, and respect. Let this moment be the beginning of a bond between our peoples. Mark bowed his head once more. Princess, I am honored. I will honor this bond with every action I take, and with every step I walk beside your people. The council members nodded slowly, their expressions changing from doubt to cautious approval. Citizens in the hall began to murmur, then whisper, then speak openly in praise. The human had faced their trials and shown that trust could be earned. The princess released his hand and returned to her platform. She addressed the hall, her voice calm but filled with authority. Let all who witness this day remember that trust is built through action, patience, and respect. Let the people of Tyrones and the human mark of earth walk together in hope, not fear. Outside the hall, people began to gather in the streets, watching the shining towers and the rivers of light. News of the human who had earned the princess's trust spread quickly. Some who had doubted now spoke of courage and honor. Others who had been wary began to wonder if the bond between worlds could be real. Mark returned to his chamber later that day, tired but filled with a sense of purpose. He looked out over the city, its rivers glowing softly beneath the evening sky. The trials were over, but the work of trust was only beginning. He knew that the princess's warning would remain in his mind, guiding him and reminding him of the responsibility he now carried. A small figure appeared at his door. It was the child from the Market of Light, holding a glowing crystal in his hands. You did it, the boy said, eyes wide. You showed everyone that humans can be trusted. Mark knelt and smiled. It was not only me. It is a choice that all of us can make. We choose respect, we choose life, and we choose to walk beside others, not against them. The boy nodded, understanding more than words could express. He ran back into the city, carrying a story of hope and courage that would spread among the people. As night fell, Mark stood once more on the balcony, looking at the stars above Tyrones. He thought of Earth, of his people, and of the journey that had brought him here. Humanity had proven itself not by force, but by spirit. They had shown that courage, honesty, and respect could create bonds stronger than fear. He felt a quiet strength within him, a sense that this moment was only the beginning. The princess's hand, the bond they had formed, and the trust of the people of Tyrones were not gifts to be taken lightly. They were responsibilities to honor, and Mark would carry them with all his heart. The stars above shone brighter than ever, reflecting the hope that now connected two worlds. And in that light, Mark understood something that he had always known deep within. Humanity's spirit was not to be measured by power alone. It was measured by the choices made in the face of challenge, the respect shown to others, and the courage to walk a path of trust. Tonight, on Tyrones, a human had shown that one touch, chosen with care and respect, could bring not ruin, but hope. And that hope would shine as brightly as the stars for all who would dare to believe in it.